Welcome to Get Real, How to Live a More Authentic Life, with psychologist and author of over 75 books, Dr. Barry Weinhold. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Get Real, How to Live a More Authentic Life with Dr. Barry Weinhold. My name is Ben Barber. Dr. Barry, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm feeling great.
Awesome. And
the sun's out. It's getting warmer, and maybe summer is almost here.
Hopefully.
I love summers here. They're my most favorite time of the year, and because here at this altitude in Colorado Springs, I'm up about 6,500 feet above sea level. And so, days are not as hot and nights are much cooler with lower humidity. So I'd love to be outside in the summer. I already have a whole lineup of outdoor concerts I want to go to. There's a couple of venues that have different groups every week that play under the stars, and for a small admission, you get to take a choice of which band you want to hear tonight. They usually have two or three at the one venue I go to, and then they also throw in a drink. If you want a beer or a glass of wine or a glass of lemonade, you could get that in with the admission fee. So I go there as much as I can. I've even cut back on my BetterHelp hours, so I have Wednesday nights free to do that.
I love it. That's so cool. I see that you have another fun T-shirt on. Let's give it a go.
And you can read it.
I never dreamed that one day I'd become a grumpy old man, but here I am, killing it.
That's how I feel sometimes. Actually, I was usually earlier on in my life, I was pretty introverted and shy, and often didn't say what was on my mind for fear it might offend somebody or hurt somebody's feelings or something. I don't know. For whatever reason, I just didn't share much. And as I've gotten older, I've become sharing more, and maybe I sound more like a grumpy old man, but I'm a pretty authentic grumpy old man now. I tell people what I think. So
I love it. So what we're talking about today is removing obstacles from living to living out of your authentic self. How do people remove the obstacles to live more out of their authentic self?
Well, as I said in the last episode, the first challenge is to know that you have an authentic self. And there's a lot of people who don't. And they sometimes their authentic self slips out by accident. I just saw this thing. Maybe you saw it too. It was George W. Bush was giving this talk to a group, and he was telling them about how awful Vladimir Putin is, and how awful Russia is, and how they have no democratic processes, and they have all these people that allow this one person to have all this power. And he said, and one person can start a war like the war in Ukraine. And he told the truth. He was authentic, even though it was by accident.
He was. And then he said, Iraq too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he did admit that, actually.
He did.
That was pretty amazing. And that was a moment of truth that people have waited for almost 20 years to have him say. And so I screamed with joy when I heard that one. And so, sometimes our authentic self slips out in kind of uncomfortable and often unpleasant ways. I was at the symphony last night, and they opened the symphony with Mozart's 35th symphony that apparently some rich dude paid him to write for him, called the Hefner Symphony, named after the guy who paid him. Very nice, and the orchestra did a great job with it. But it made me think about a joke about Mozart. And Sam and Edna were, Sam was a haberdasher. You know what a haberdasher is?
Somebody that does something with shoes?
No, it's a tailor.
Okay.
Yeah, and so he lived in Brooklyn, and he had an uncle, and who was a famous attorney, Abe, and actually Abe won his probably his biggest court case wearing one of the suits that Sam had made for him. And so he was very appreciative of Sam. And so when he died, he left Sam and Edna a great deal of money in his will. And so suddenly Sam and Edna get to be invited to gallery openings and to symphony performances. And so they go to one at Lincoln Center. The New York Philharmonic is performing there. And there's a little cocktail party before the event starts, before the concert starts. And so wanting to try to act like they were part of the group that was there and knew what they were doing, they joined a group of about 5 or 6 people who were talking about the concert. And one of the persons said, yeah, they're doing one of Mozart's pieces tonight. And Edna, wanting to try to make sure that she was part of the group and was keeping up with the conversation, said, oh, Mozart. She said, yes, I know him well. She said, in fact, I actually saw him this morning getting on the number 5 bus to go to the beach. Just before he got on, he waved to me. And everyone's sort of silent about, oh my goodness, how are they going to handle this? So somebody quickly changes the subject. But Sam is there. He didn't say anything, but he kind of tugs on Edna's sleeve and he motions her to come with him. And they go over in a corner and he says, now, Edna, you should not have opened your mouth and told them that. I mean, now people know how stupid you are. And if you just kept your mouth shut, you'd have been fine. But you did it. You tried to be authentic and you made a mistake. But I bet everybody that heard you talk about that knows that the number 5 bus doesn't go to the beach. So he was trying to be authentic and blew it. So anyway, we sometimes do that. We sometimes make fools of ourselves, trying to make up for something that we should have been learning how to do a long time ago. But when I work with my clients, yeah,
I do that.
Do you have a story to tell about that?
I have many stories to tell. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but they're all there.
Yeah, I have to say I've done the same thing. I've said things and done things, and I thought, now why did I do that? And why did I say that? And sometimes I'm processing that for days afterwards, if it turns out to be a very embarrassing situation. But it's really as I work with people doing this, I've kind of found a couple of ways that help me help them get started with this process. So I'd like to share that with our audience. And I have them do a writing list called the 2 lists. And I don't know if you have a copy of that. Yeah, here it is. It's a self-awareness exercise that I ask them to do. And basically, list 1 is to think back on your childhood, or actually before the age of 18, and think about if there was something that you wish you'd have gotten more of during that time. Then that goes on list 1, and you make a list for your mother and your father, or whoever was in those roles, and maybe an aunt and uncle or grandfather or grandmother nowadays, but whoever's in those roles. And so you make a list of the things you wanted but did not get, and kind of thinking, well, if I'd have gotten that, maybe my life as an adult would be a lot easier than it is. And so it really is a kind of a list of the things that I call them the neglect list, the things that we neglected to get enough of growing up. And everybody has some of those. I mean, I mentioned my one earlier in the earlier episode about nobody in my family ever told me that they loved me. And very few people in my family ever hugged me as a child. And so that went on my list. And there were other things that I wished I'd have gotten from my parents more being present with me. I felt even when they were in the same room with me, they were worrying about something else or somebody else, some other place, and they weren't present with me. And so it was really sometimes hard to be in that situation. Anyway, that's list one. And then list two is all the things that in looking back at your childhood, you wish you hadn't gotten. And everybody has some of those. Something that somebody said or done that stuck in your craw and caused you to apparently, as an adult, have some negative consequences, long-lasting perhaps, effects of something that was done or said to you in that first 18 years. And so you write those down for both your mother and your father. And I mean, a perfect example of that one for me was the one I think I shared last month about my mother, who constantly repeated this story about my birth and how when she saw me for the first time, she says, "That's not my baby. He's ugly." And that would have been fine if she told it to the people around her, the nurses and everything. But she repeated that story over and over and over every time somebody that she knew was pregnant, and often with me standing right by her side. And that had a very negative effect on me. So that was on my list of things that I wish I had not gotten and would have made my life easier as an adult if I hadn't gotten that. So after clients do that list, and I urge members of the audience to fill out that list. And then here's what I do with the list. Okay, if there's anything on the list, on the first list, that you didn't get growing up that you wish you'd had that would have made your life better today, what's stopping you from getting it now? So that's what I say. Okay, what can you do to fill in that gap right now? And so that's becomes your task, because I say to my clients, you have two choices. You can either blame your parents for not giving you that, or you can grow up. And growing up means taking responsibility for whatever you didn't get and getting it. And now you have many more resources to get it than you did when it originally happened. So there should be no reason why you can't get what you never got as a child right now. Now, there's some people who hold out and say, oh, well, it didn't come from my parents, so it doesn't count. It still counts. If you can make it happen and you can fill in that void, that gap of things that you didn't get growing up, that makes a huge difference in your life. And it also says that when my clients start doing that, they realize how much they're in charge of all this. That's my goal when I work with clients, is to get them to realize how much power they have to change their lives themselves. I'm just here as catalyst, but they're going to have to do the work. And so giving them that power and emphasizing that power that they have is 99% of the work I do. Now, the second list, the list of things that you got that you wish you didn't get. That's a very interesting list. And I have things, as I mentioned, on my list about that. And so what I typically, again, say, okay, you're going to have to take charge of this. So when you have a piece of furniture or a piece of clothing that no longer fits you, or you no longer find it useful to have it, what do you do with it then? What do you do with it?
Give it away, donate it,
Give
throw
it
it
away.
Yeah.
Get rid of it. Get it out of your life because you don't need it anymore. That's the same with things that you got that now you find out you don't need. You got to give it back. And you know what giving back means? The word to give back means to forgive, to give back. So you have to forgive your parents or whoever gave this to you, meaning not in the kind of Christian or other kind of framework, but simply the fact that if you have something you got that you don't need, you got to give it back. And that if really relates to the word forgive, to give back. And so, and I tell people, and there's lots of ways you could do that. I mean, you have to be creative sometimes to do that. I had this one couple recently who had a bunch of stuff they wanted to give back. They actually, in this case, they had decided that their old relationship was dead, that it wasn't working. They wanted to get rid of it. They wanted to start a new relationship. So what I asked them to do is to give back everything that they no longer wanted in their new relationship in some creative way. So they took a bucket of rocks down to the lake, and for each thing they wanted to give back to the old relationship, they threw a rock in the lake. And they also had written them down too, so they had a written record of them. And so that was the basis for, we don't want any of these things in our new relationship. Then we started to look at, okay, now what do you want in the new relationship? But we had to get rid of the old before we could look at the new. I mean, and I've had people who give back things to their parents through writing them down on a piece of paper and burning them, or they use an empty chair, as I mentioned before, where they put the parent in the chair and they say, I'm giving back to you. Actually, I tell them, don't give them back to the parents because it didn't start with them. That probably just carried on an intergenerational pattern that went back as many as 14 generations. So you give it back to wherever it originated. You don't know where it was. But again, when you're giving back negative things, I don't like to give back negative things to dead people. So I say, okay, give it back, but turn it into light. Turn it into something that is going to be transformed into light at some place, somewhere, sometime, and is no longer yours anymore to deal with. So that's another way I work with people to give it back. Or I had another couple who went out to a local park and they draped a piece of plastic over a boulder, and they had 3 dozen eggs. And for everything they wanted to give back to their parents or to wherever, they threw an egg at that plastic and smashed it. And they had a ball doing it. I mean, it was a great creative way to do it. So there's lots of ways to give things back to people. And some people can actually give it back directly. And so it isn't necessarily always a symbolic giving back, but frequently either the parents are dead or they know that their parents would not be receptive to listening to them give back the things that they got from them that they found not useful. So but you can still, even if you don't have parents who be receptive, you're not dead. You can still figure out ways to give that back. And so that's how I work with people when I start with recovering the authentic self. Is you have to first of all get rid of some of the stuff that no longer, you have to fill in the things you didn't get and get rid of the stuff you no longer need. Those are 2 essential pieces of recovery of the authentic or true self. And
It sounds like Marie Kondo, right? The organization guru that swept the country at the beginning of the pandemic or right before the pandemic with a Netflix special and a book about decluttering your house, right? And holding an item and seeing if it sparks joy in you.
yeah,
And if it doesn't, give it away. Get
yeah,
rid of it,
yeah,
and only
we do clutter up our lives in many ways.
emotionally, yeah.
Yeah, emotionally and physically. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good analogy, I think, for it. And I had an opportunity to give back some things to my parents, and well, actually, it was more the other way. It was things I wished I had gotten from them and I didn't get, and so in a very risky. I was feeling very, very, very risky at the time, apparently. So I made a list of all the things I wish they had said to me that they didn't. like, you're okay just the way you are. Like, I didn't have to perform to their expectations to be okay. And things like that were on my list. Something about money and how my relationship to money. And I had a kind of some mixed messages about that from my parents. And so I had to clean all that up. So I wrote all the stuff down that I wished I had gotten from them, but never did. I wish they had said to me. So I went home, my list, armed with my list, sat them down in the living room, and put a tape recorder in front of them on the coffee table. And I handed them a list, and I said, I really would like you to say these things to me in the most sincere way, in your own words, that you can. And I'm putting a tape recorder here because I don't want to ever deceive myself into thinking I never got these things. So you have a chance now to give me the things that I wish I had gotten earlier, but now there's a chance for you to do it now. Are you willing to do that? And they both were delighted to do it. And it was so moving experience. I sat there and just felt every word that they were saying to me as kind of affirmation about who I thought I was, and never got really affirmed about that as a child. And so I think that again may not be the thing that everyone would want to do, but it worked for me. And again, what many times my clients will say to me now, how do I know I'm done? I'm finished with this stuff, these problems I have. And I say, well, one of the markers is that when you can ask for what you want and need from other people in such a way that they're delighted to give it to you, then you're done. So in that case, I was done on that issue. And because they were delighted to help me and give me that. But earlier on, I couldn't have done that because I wasn't finished. I still had unfinished business with them. And until I got that finished, I wasn't ready to ask them for that.
And that's what it's all about, right? Getting the unfinished business and then being able to ask. And I think that I love all of the tools that you're giving in every episode for people to take and look at. And this self-awareness exercise of the 2 list is just that. You can get that in the Google Drive link in the show notes. And you can also find in that Google Drive all of the other self-assessment quizzes and charts and stuff that Dr. Weinhold has made for us as assets for the show. Is there anything else that you'd like to cover before we say goodbye today?
No, I'm out of words. I'm usually not out of words, but today I think I've said all I want to say.
I love it. And you are a wealth of knowledge and information. Obviously, I mean, you're the author of over 75 books on psychology. You can talk and teach for days, and we're really appreciative of that. So thank you for joining us for another episode of Get Real, How to Live a More Authentic Life. Dr. Barry Weinhold, thank you, sir. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Ben.
All right. We'll see you guys next time.
See you.
For more information, please visit the Colorado Institute for Conflict Resolution and Creative Leadership at CICRCL.org or click the link in the show notes.